All right, so welcome to the webinar. Excited to have you guys here and anybody who's watching the replay. I know there's gonna be a lot of people watching this replay. So this webinar is all about how to start a painting company in 2020. So I'm really excited to have you guys. Like I mentioned to some of the people before I started this recording, I'm working from home today. We got about 12 to 15 inches of snow last night. So that was my cue to stay home all day today. So I'm having a pretty nice day here at home, but obviously still doing this webinar. So excited to have you guys here. And we're going to spend, I don't know, probably about an hour diving into how we can make starting a painting business really simple in 2020. I've been doing this for a long time. I'm going to dive into my background a little bit in a second. So let's just get right to it, everybody. So like I said, this is about how to start a painting business 2020, specifically how to make starting a painting business easy. Starting a business is a thing that typically is overwhelming, creates a lot of nerves and anxiety for people. It's this big unknown. And typically the unknown generates that anxiety. You know, we usually complicate things that seem to be unknown. And so today I want to show you how to make this really pretty easy. You know, for the first 5 or 6 years, it was kind of, well, for the first 6 years of my career, I worked with a college painting company where first year I was an intern, right? So I was 18 years old, it was my first job. I was an intern. I knocked doors, sold paint jobs, hired painters, managed job sites, painted all the houses, and actually earned profit. It wasn't hourly or anything else. It was based on the profit you earn. So I ran a $60,000 painting business and oversaw 6 people in the summer, 6 painters, and a couple of people doing door-to-door for me and things like that. And I learned a ton that year, but one of the things is, well, so then the next 5 years, I coached and mentored other college kids to start and run a painting business. It was an incredible internship. There's a bunch of companies, a handful of companies that do this. They're very big companies, do tens of millions of dollars in business a year with a bunch of college students running the business who have no background in business and no background in painting. And so for those 5 years, when I was recruiting and training other college students, one of the things we always talked about when we were recruiting people was, why do you think we chose a painting business? You know, why are we doing painting? And the answer was, well, we're doing painting for a few reasons. One reason we do painting is there's a huge, huge demand for painting. Every single building you look at needs to be painted inside and out, and it needs to be repainted every 5, 7, 8 years, changes depending on the part of the country you're in. But every single structure needs to be painted inside and out, and it needs to be done again and again. There's a huge growing market. It's a need-based market. People have to protect their investment. They've got to protect their homes. Like, we live in a time where people do painting. It's more of a need than a want. Now, of course, there's a lot of want-based painting, but most of the time, people are painting because they need to. You don't see a lot of people who just love dropping $4,000 to paint the exterior of their house, but a lot of people are doing it because they need to protect the exterior of their home. So that's the big first reason why we do it. The second reason why we are in a painting business and what we tell these college students is it's easy. We're not developing software here. We're applying a liquid to a surface. We're putting paint on a house. Now, yes, the trade of painting is not to disrespect the trade of painting. People who really know their trade, like, trust me, I've seen some bad painters paint a house. I'm one of them. I'm a terrible painter. But there are some amazing painters out there who really know their trade very well. They know how to do things right. And I know I don't need to be great at painting to run a great painting business. I need to know how you properly prep, what that should look like. And fortunately for me, in this internship, we were only doing mostly exterior residential painting. If it was too complicated, we just wouldn't do it. And the typical exterior residential repaint, there's only about 5 main problems you run into on an exterior residential repaint. You run into peeling paint, cracking paint, nail holes, faded paint, different types of peeling paint, rotten wood. There's not that many different things. And what you need to know is how to identify those things, how they should be taken care of the proper way, and how to explain that to a customer and educate a customer on why it should be done that way. And now you know how to deliver a paint job. We got to prep it, and then we need to use good materials, and then we need to paint it so it looks good. But even a homeowner, anybody without painting experience can tell if something actually looks good, if the paint is in the right place. It's like a giant coloring book, right? So not to diminish the trade, because there's a lot more nuances, but when starting a business, we can keep it quite simple and then slowly expand out. right? So we start with just residential exterior repaints, and then we can start doing more complicated ones. And then we can start doing interior residential simple, then more complicated, and then slowly maybe some commercial projects. And we slowly start building out as we learn this trade more and more. But when we're just doing exterior residential repaints, it's pretty easy business. So anyways, that was kind of my background. I did that for 5 years. I generated about $2.5 million in business. I coached about 100 college students to start and build a painting business. It was an incredible experience for the people who worked with me. A lot of them are my best friends now. A lot of my top interns run multi-million-dollar companies now. I run a bunch of businesses. So it was an amazing experience over those 6 years while I was in school getting my degree in economics and business. So the point is that we want to show you guys, how do we make this business easy? It doesn't need to be complicated. It doesn't need to be hard. If thousands of college kids across the country can do it, so can you. And you actually have some advantages over that as well. And I'm not going to go into comparing, these college run internships to this opportunity, but just to set some groundwork on, look, this doesn't need to be hard and difficult. There are some ways to keep it easy. And that's what we're going to jump into today, is take away some of the mystery to starting a business. So what to expect, like I said, told you a little bit about me, started in 2004. In 2010 is when I finished with that company, started my own painting company. I was no longer in school, started a bunch of other businesses over the next few years. My painting company kept growing and growing. So in 2018, I ran 4 painting companies. They did 4.1 million in business. This year, those 4 companies did 5.8, 5.9 million in business. So we're growing steadily. We've started 16 painting companies. I've started 16 painting companies since 2014. We've sold some of those. We closed some of those, made a lot of mistakes, learned a lot of things, and we're going to do things differently as we continue to start more companies. Over 1,000 members in Painting Business Pro who are following the program. I'll tell you more about that later. And one thing is that you should know is I practice what I preach. There's nothing that I teach people to do that I don't do or I haven't done. I don't really speak to things that I don't have experience with. I'm constantly testing, constantly trying new things, constantly learning, implementing things in my business, and then teaching what works to other people. I already talked a little bit about why the painting business. So again, one is it's an amazing market, huge market, need-based. We just did our numbers and we did $1.8 million in business in Fort Collins. There's 150,000 people in Fort Collins, maybe. We did 1.8 million, and we definitely can grow more. And then just down the road, in a place that's got 30,000 people, we did 15 grand. I mean, we're doing with Foothills Painting 3.5 million in a population of about 300,000, and we are far from totally tapping that market. We're talking about just residential repaints. We're not even in commercial yet. We haven't even squeezed the juice out. We probably can get to 10 million in just northern Colorado with just residential. Massive market. You can make $100,000 a year running a $300,000 painting business. You don't need to get a lot of the business to have a really nice business and a really nice income. So massive market, great market, pretty easy business to learn. There is a lot of competition. Like there's a lot of painters out there, but there's very little competitors. All you've got to do to carve out your little slice of the pie is you've just got to be better than some of the people who are already in business. And it's not hard to do that. All you got to do is go ask anyone who owns a home and has hired a contractor what their experience was like. And everyone's got horror stories about contractors because, frankly, contractors do an awful job. I'm in the middle of this right now on my own home, dealing with contractors who are doing a really crummy job. And it's really frustrating. So if you can just bring some professionalism and integrity to your trade, you're going to be better than many of the people out there. So that's all I'm going to cover for that. Now, like I said, the purpose of this webinar is to show you how to make starting your business simple. Everything seems complicated until you understand it. This business can be very simple and easy to start. And then for those of you guys who are here, we'll do a Q&A at the very end. So just write your questions down as they come up as we go through these slides. All right, so let's get started. So there's 2 aspects I'm going to talk about with starting up. One is starting up and the other is one's starting up logistics, one's starting up being in business. So logistically, this was actually pretty confusing for me. I'm like, so how do you actually start a business? What are all the things you're supposed to do? It's really pretty simple. You got to pick out a business name and build your logo. Don't build your logo until you've made sure you've registered your business, but literally you can get a logo done on Fiverr for like 15 bucks. You can get a pretty nice looking logo done for 15 bucks on Fiverr. Okay, your business name, brainstorm with your friends. So this is literally 15 bucks, get your business name and your logo. Then what you're gonna do is you need to set up your business legally. So what you do is you register your business with the Secretary of State. So you could just Google that. I'll send out an email on following this recording, and we'll put like a link in the comments or something on YouTube for a link to a business launch checklist that'll go into a little bit more detail. I'm not going to spend a lot of time showing you guys how to do these on this webinar because I've got a checklist that'll walk you through that. But the first thing you do is register your business. So that's where you go to the state of Colorado, Secretary of State, and you say, hey, I want to register Foothills Painting LLC, and you pay a little fee, and now your business is registered as an LLC. And then you got to go to the Fed and get your employer identification number. This is how they identify you for tax purposes. So you're going to need this if you want to open a bank account. This is free. It doesn't cost any money to get an EIN. Again, that'll be in the launch checklist, which I'll send out to everyone who's on the webinar. So those are the first two things you do to be able to set up your bank account. And again, that's 50 to 150 bucks to register your business, depending on the state you're in. Then you take those two pieces of paper, your business registration and your EIN, and you go to the bank and you set up a bank account. And then what you're going to do is you're going to get your insurance and workers' comp. You should be able to get both of these things from the same insurance agent. You get $1 million in general liability insurance. You get a workers' compensation policy, and you can just say, I'm doing all the work myself and sign a waiver, and you'll pay zero on workers' comp. And when you get audited at the end of the year, you might owe some money. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail on workers' comp because your insurance agent will inform you about that. My point is that you can get workers' comp without paying any money. You can get, or a very, very small amount. And insurance, you can get $1 million policy for about 150 bucks a month. Pretty straightforward. So not very expensive so far to get legally set up. The last thing is the license. Now, some states require a license, some states don't require a license, and then some states, the license requirements vary county to county. So for example, Colorado and Texas don't need a license. North Carolina don't need a license. So this is just an irrelevant step. And then I know some places you need a license is Maryland, Michigan, New York, California. So those are some states that require a license. And then there's places like Florida where every different county requires a different license. They have different requirements depending on the county you're operating in. So this is something you got to do a little bit of research on your own to find this information. Start with Google, contact a couple of local governments. And by the way, your insurance agent should know this information and should be able to help you with that. Getting your license requires two things. One, it usually requires passing some test and usually requires some kind of experience. Two, it costs money. So in Michigan, I think it was $1,000 and we had to pass a test. In Florida, it cost some amount of money and we had to prove we had a certain amount of experience. It's the same thing in California. You need to have a certain amount of experience in painting to get a license. However, a lot of people ask me like, hey, I don't have the necessary experience. Can I still get a license? And the answer is almost always yes. How you get a license without the relevant experience varies state to state. But I have a student in California who didn't have the necessary experience, and after enough research, found a way to get a license without the experience. So sometimes there's intermediary companies that you can work with that will kind of vouch for you, and you pay them a fee to register with you. Another thing you can do is get creative. You can see maybe there's a friend of yours who does have the necessary experience, and you can say, hey, start this company with me, and then I'm going to buy you out of it in this amount of time once we have our license and pay you this amount. Or maybe I'll just, hey, 5% owner, and I'm just going to kick you money for the first year, and then we're going to terminate our agreement. And you can probably make a deal with somebody who can help you out with getting your license. You just have to be able to meet the requirements and not break any rules. And so the first step is know the rules and then get creative and find a way to get your license. Okay? So that's starting up in logistics. If you have any questions, write them down. Now, at this point, we've got a business name, a logo, we're registered, we got a bank account, and we're insured. We're ready to actually start doing business. So now we want to talk about being in business. So the first thing we're going to do, at least that I would recommend you do, is create a business plan. Now, one little caveat. what this webinar is going to be about an hour long. I do have a lot more advice for you than what we're going to cover in this 1 hour. Okay, so there are some other things that I would recommend knowing and being prepared for before you get started. So this is kind of the simplified version. I'll talk about the more detailed version later on. But one of the other things we'd want to do at the beginning is have a general plan for how we're going to grow the business and things like that. But this is going to be the most critical couple things. You can start up with just what we cover in this webinar. But it's also not everything, which is probably obvious, but I just want to state that. So step one is create a business plan. So let's look at what that looks like. I'm going to send out to everybody who's on the webinar. You're going to get this, you're going to get a link to this so you can use it to create your own business plan. Some of you guys, this should be pretty familiar to. Those of you who were with me yesterday on the other webinar, this one's got different numbers in it. So this is a master business plan, and it's a basic one. It's the basic version. I have a more detailed one too, but for a startup, you want to just keep it simple, okay? Now, this is, I've already filled this out for somebody who's starting a business in January with pretty good expectations. Now, no matter when you're starting this business, you're going to still fill this out. It's just going to change. If you fill it out halfway, if you start halfway through the year, you'll change your numbers a little bit. That's okay. You can use this as a baseline. When is the best time to start a business? Honestly, the answer is always going to be now, because the sooner you start, the sooner you start learning. And the sooner you start learning, the sooner you get to mastery. And once you get to mastery, or a certain level of mastery, which I'm going to go through in a minute, the sooner you can do 10 to 15,000 a week in revenue and make 3 to 5 grand a week. So now is always a good time to start. Now, depending on when you start, it might be busier or less busy. But later in the webinar, we're going to talk about how you start with if you're keeping a full-time job or something. So how can I start this business on the side so that any time is a good time to start the business? So if you're watching this webinar, because this will be recorded, if you're watching this later, and maybe it's March or April or June, you'll just need to adjust the numbers appropriately and know that that's still a great time to start this business. The sooner you start, the sooner you learn. Okay. So how you fill out a business plan? You're going to fill out this financials, and then the sales plan, and then the production plan. I've already filled it out for you, so we're just going to go over it. So the first thing we're going to put in here is the revenue. So we're going to say 300,000 for 2020. You won't have a production manager at the beginning. You will pay your subcontractors. So in this example, I've estimated 55%. Our company aims for 50. Next year will be 48. Workers' comp. That's separate from your insurance. Materials. So test samples, maybe some materials you buy for your contractors. No sales rep. So your total variable expenses are here. This is your gross profit margin after those expenses. So 300K minus 175 is 125. And that's your gross profit margin. Then we look at your fixed costs, your overhead. You got insurance for 2 grand. And of course, you'll update these numbers once you get your actual quotes. Accounting. So you should be able to get a bookkeeper to do your books at the end of the year for like $750, because it's going to be a pretty simple business. And then office supplies. That's going to include business cards, flyers, lawn signs, marketing materials, things like that. And then we've got marketing costs. Door to door, and this is just examples, okay? Because door to door is great, but you can put anything in here. But for this example, say we spend 10 grand on door to door, 3,500 on painter choice. These are just different marketing avenues for a total of $32,000 in marketing. At our company, $32,000 in marketing generates about $600,000 in business. So we're being conservative here. At our company, we would spend about $150,000 on subcontractors, not 165. So we add up your total fixed, 32. Net profit would be $92,000. So what you can do is you can play with these different numbers and say, hey, maybe it's 350. That'll bump these different expenses up. And how much would I make then? And you can kind of play with this budget to see how you're going to turn out. So you can make a plan for the year. That's your business plan. Then we're going to look at the sales plan. So here we're aiming for 300,000 in sales, an average job size of $3,500, a 30% sales rate, which means you could go do 10 estimates, you book 3 of them, a 70% lead conversion rate, which means you get 10 leads, you set up 7 estimates, and 42 weeks of sales. So when you get this document, let's say you start in March, you're like, I'm really only going to have 34 weeks of sales. Well, actually, before I do that, let me show you what this is doing. So these numbers calculate what your weekly targets need to be. So it's like, based on this information, you need to get 10 leads a week, do 7 estimates a week, book 2 jobs a week for 71.42 a week. If you do that for 42 weeks, you'll get to 300,000. Now, if I change this to 30, it changes these numbers. If I change my job size to 3,000, it changes these numbers. So the first thing I do on this is I fill out these numbers. If you're not sure, you can guess. And then you can adjust it once you get into the season and start learning. And then based on these numbers, you fill in down here, which you'll notice I already did. Okay. And this is going to be your budget. See that? Budget. So that's 10 leads a week, 7 estimates a week, 2 jobs booked for 700. And then once the year starts, you actually fill this in. You know, how many leads did you get the first week? How many estimates did you do? How many jobs did you book? What was your weekly sales? And then it'll total up your sales for you so you can see through the year how you're doing against your budget and your plan. Then we're going to fill out the production plan. So we got to sell it, but we also got to actually get those houses painted. So I put in the total revenue, how many weeks I can actually paint houses. It'll tell me how much I do a week on average. And then in this example, you just plug these numbers in week by week. So I just kind of said, hey, maybe we start doing a couple jobs in February, maybe a job a week. Then we bump it up a little in April. And then by May, we're doing 10K a week. And then at the end of the season, once we've really figured things out, we do 15,000 a week for about 8 weeks in August and September. And then we start ramping down. And this says, oh, look, that's 338,000 in production. Okay. So you can kind of play with these plans to see what do I actually need to do week to week to hit these targets of my financial goals for the year. So this is how we lay down the groundwork for a business plan. If you have any questions, write them down. So that's step 1 for actually getting started in business. We just make the plan. You know, it might take you a few hours to make that plan. The next thing we need to do is what we do all year, which is hit the plan. How do we hit the plan? Well, we need to get leads. We need to do estimates. We need to make sales. So leads is your marketing strategy, right? So that's, I hate when it does that. So, I hate when it does that. Okay. So we need leads. How do we get leads? Well, that's your marketing strategy. How do we do estimates? Okay, so now we got leads. The next thing we got to do is estimates. How do we do estimates? Well, you got to call your leads. That's our conversion strategy. How quickly do you call your leads? How frequently do you call your leads? Do you email them? Do you text them? How do you turn leads into scheduled appointments? This also includes your phone call to actually schedule the estimate. The next thing is sales, right? We sell 2 jobs. Okay, well, that's your professional sales process. And then the next thing we need is how do you get those done? That's your production system. How do you produce it? So now we've got the jobs, leads, estimates, sales, we got the jobs. And then how do we produce? That's our production system. That's how we recruit, train, manage our painters and subcontractors. And then the last thing is profit, right? Because if we get leads, do estimates, sell jobs, produce the jobs, but we don't make profit, that's a problem. How we make profit is we have good estimating systems to come up with the right price and a good system for what we pay out to our subcontractors or to our employees and materials. So we make sure we're paying out the proper amounts, we're estimating the right number, and then we're paying out the right number so that that profit margin is correct. That's fundamentally how we build this business, and that's the whole thing. So then what happens is you start the year, okay? So you build this plan in the next month, and then January comes around, and first week of January happens, and you don't hit your numbers, right? You weren't planning on producing anything, but your plan was to sell $7,000 and do, book 2 jobs and do 7 estimates. Maybe you did 0 estimates, you got 3 leads, and so you didn't book anything. That's a problem, right? We didn't hit the number. So if you don't think you can hit your numbers, you're not hitting your numbers, not sure how to hit your numbers, that's going to be a problem. So every problem you have in business has already been solved by somebody else. And we live in a really cool time right now where most of the problems that have been solved, people solve the problems, and now people are teaching other people how they solve those problems. And that's a business, right? Like Painting Business Pro, that's what I do. I teach people how to do a marketing strategy, how to have a professional sales process, how to estimate jobs, how to hire and manage contractors, how to manage your profit margins. I teach that. I've already solved that. I teach that. And that's a business for me. And a lot of people teach things for free, and other people teach things for less money. And so there's a ton of places where you can find answers. So there's really two options to solving these problems. One is you can come up with your own solutions. So maybe you start the business and you buy, a whole bunch of flyers and you go drop them all over town, and you're like, all right, I need to do 7 estimates, and nobody calls. You're like, oh crap, that didn't work. So then maybe you're like, okay, now back to the drawing board. Okay, here's a new strategy for leads. Roll that out. Crap, that didn't work. Okay, back to the drawing board. New strategy. Roll that out. Oh crap, I got 2 estimates and I booked a job. Sweet, let's do more of that. And then you start solving this problem. So that's what you get paid to do as an entrepreneur, is you solve problems. And there's an easy way to solve problems, which is just stand on the shoulders of others. And then there's a hard way to do it, which is you blaze the trail on your own. But the trail has already been blazed. So you really don't need to do this on your own. That's definitely the hard way. It's the slower way, but you can do it. So the key to building this business, guys, is solving just one problem at a time. Okay, so when you get started in this business, the hardest job you will ever sell will be the first one. The hardest estimates you ever do will be the first ones. Everything the first time you do it will be the hardest. The second time you do it, it gets a little easier. The third time a little easier. The fourth time a little easier. It'll get easier and easier. And so what I notice is most people don't make it long enough. They don't stick around long enough. They quit too early and they quit too easy, and they have no persistence in building a business. They get too frustrated too early. Now, all you have to do is solve 5 problems. And when you solve just one problem at a time, each problem leads to bigger results. So let's say you start out at 0, right? No leads, no estimates, no sales, no revenue produced, no profit. The first problem to solve is I need leads. Once you solve that problem, maybe you start getting 5 leads a week, but you're not setting any of them up for estimates. So now I got to solve that problem. How do I get these leads set up for estimates? And now you start setting up 4 estimates a week off those 5 leads. Great, now I got estimates. And then you're doing estimates. This might be 8 weeks in, right? You're doing estimates. You still haven't booked a job. You get 5 leads a week though, and 4 estimates, and you're not selling. Now I got to solve the problem called sell the job. Now, oh crap, I finally, after a few weeks of working this out, I sell my first job. Now I can sell 1 out of 4. Okay, good. Now you're doing 3,000 a week. We're 12 weeks in, you're only at 3,000 a week. It feels like miserable failure. So then we go back and we're like, hey, now I need more leads. So we go back and solve the lead problem again, and we get up to 10 leads, which translates to 8 estimates, which translates to 2 book jobs for $6,000 a week. Shit, now we're making $2,000 a week in profit. Now you're on track to make $80,000 to $1,000 a year already by solving these few problems. And then you get into production and you solve that problem. But once you solve these 5 problems, you should be able to do about $10,000 a week in business and make a few $1,000s a week, which is amazing. And you can do that 30 to 40 weeks out of the year and make $100,000 a year. Now, can you solve those 5 problems in 1 year if you're aggressive about it? I believe that you can. I believe that you're absolutely capable of solving those 5 things, especially if you learn from other people who've already solved it. And if you're just persistent, you just take action. Just one problem at a time. See how most people deal with problems is they just complain about them. They complain about them, they get frustrated, they give up, mostly they complain. Or they try a couple different things and those couple different things don't work, so then they complain. And I say, hey, well, what have you done? And they're like, well, I tried this, didn't work. And I'm like, okay, great. You tried one other thing. Do you know that there's like hundreds and hundreds of things you could try? And you've tried 2 and you're just complaining? How you need to deal with problems if you're going to be an entrepreneur is you just got to deal with it like it's a problem to solve. That's what you get paid for. You just got to solve one problem, just the next problem. See, first I got to get 0 leads to 5 leads. Cool, I'm doing that. Now I'm doing 4 estimates, booking a job. Now I get to 10 leads, 8 estimates, book 2 jobs. Now let's do 10 estimates, 8 leads. Let's book 3 jobs. Okay, now I'm booking $9,000 a week. Now how do I produce it? Well, maybe I produce the first job to make no money. Then the next jobs I make a little money. Then the next jobs I make a little more money. And boom, now I'm making $3 grand a week on $9 grand. And that might take you a year or two, but then you're making $100,000 a year and you have solved these problems and you've got some foundation, and then it becomes all upside. See, my businesses could all crumble to the ground tomorrow, and I could have a $1 million painting company up and running the next year because I've already learned how to solve all the problems from 0 to $1 million. So, if you're on this webinar, you've probably got anywhere from 10 to 40 years of working ahead of you. So yeah, it might take a couple years and some failure and frustration, but then you've got, 28 years of success ahead of you. So that's how I want to keep this simple for you. So we're going to come back. I know there's some other questions that probably prompts, which I'm going to address as we keep going. But you just got to get so far that first we just got to establish the business. That's the logistics. And then we want to create a business plan. So we have a plan now. And then my goal is to hit the business plan. Will I hit the plan? No. So wherever I don't hit the plan, we're just going to say, okay, I got a problem here. I got a problem to solve. That's it. So I got 2 ways to solve a problem. I can keep trying different things on my own, or I can find someone else who already solved the problem. That's it. It's really simple. It's really, really simple. Now, the only way that someone actually fails in this business is 2 things. One, if you stumble across a problem and you quit. That's one way to fail, when you quit. When you stop trying to solve a problem. That's one way that you can fail. The second way you fail is you make bad financial decisions. One bad financial decision you can make is investing a whole bunch of money that you don't have into things that you don't know what you're investing into. I see it happen all the time. I talk to people who started the business 2 months ago, and they just invested $5 grand into their business, and they're getting no calls, no leads, and they're out of money. What they should have done is put that $5 grand into a different place where they would have got leads, which is what I would have told them to do. So if you spend money you don't have on investments you don't know that they're going to return, and you're making bad financial decisions, you can get yourself in a spot where you got no money, no leads coming in. Fortunately, you can still go knock doors. You can still go hustle and find other ways to generate business and get yourself going. But that is one way you could fail. One way is quitting. 2 is bad financial decisions. Or 3, I guess there's a third, is if you, what they call it, burn the ships, right? You walk into your employer and your job and you give everybody the finger and say, I'm done, I'm starting a business, screw all you guys, and you quit your job and you go to start your business and you're not successful fast enough and you run out of money and you have to go get a job again. But even if that happens, you can still keep working on solving these problems on the side of your job. So the only real way people fail is quitting or bad financial decisions. So we set up the business, we make a plan, and then we start working the business. Whatever part of the plan we don't hit is a problem. We solve the problem 1 of 2 ways. Okay, so that's that. Now I want to talk to you guys about how do you start this business without risk. And by the way, some of you guys might be like, okay, great, but how do I do a marketing strategy? How do I call leads, professional sales? Like, I'm going to talk to you about how you can how you can put this together in a minute. So how do you start up without risk? So the first thing is a lot of people, if you're doing this, you probably have a full-time job. Most people have a full-time job. Most people aren't starting this business because they just have no job and they got to do something. So I've got a YouTube video called How to Start a Painting Business While Keeping a Full-Time Job. But here's basically how you do it. You do the exact same thing, but it's just smaller numbers, right? Instead of trying to do 10 estimates a week, just work on doing 3 or 4 estimates a week on the side. So what I would recommend thinking about is, how much money do I make at my full-time job? Let's say it's 60 grand a year. So how much money do I need to make from my painting business every week so that I can quit my job? And the answer would probably be, if you make 60 grand a year, the answer is $1,200 a week. So I've got to make $1,200 a week from my painting business to replace my job. So that becomes your goal. That becomes your business plan. See, you can make $1,200 a week selling one job a week. You can sell one job a week doing 4 estimates a week. You can do 4 estimates a week in like 8 hours a week. So you do it on the side. And by the way, by the time you're making $1,200 a week on your painting business, you probably already made money. You know, you made $600 a week for a few weeks, and then $800 a week for a few weeks, and then $1,000 a week for a few weeks, and you just stash that profit. So you finally have it where you've made $1,200 a week, 3 weeks in a row, and you're like, okay, I'm actually making the same from my painting business as I am from my job. And you've got this nest egg of 8 to 10 grand that you've made. And that's when you burn the ships. That's when you say, okay, job, I'm done. If I can make $1,200 a week on my painting business working it part-time, I definitely can make $1,200 a week working it full-time. So I'm comfortable. And maybe you're comfortable leaving your job sooner than that, right? If you're making $800 a week part-time, you probably can make $1,200 a week full-time. So you just do it on the side until you are confident that if you just did it full-time, it would do better than your job. And then you quit your job, and now you've got yourself in business. So we keep it really simple. There's no reason to start with a risk. Now, the other risk is how much does it cost to start up? Now, I told you here, $15, $50 to $100, $150, and then maybe a license. So here we're at anywhere from $300 to $1,300, depending on where you're at. So that's the first cost, $300 to $1,300. And then we've got this stuff here. Now, doing estimates doesn't cost money. Doing sales doesn't cost money. Producing jobs doesn't cost money. Profit doesn't cost money. The only other cost you have is marketing. And there are ways you can market your business for free, so you don't even need to spend any money on marketing. You will spend some money on marketing materials like contracts, business cards, maybe a couple $100. So now we're at $500 to $1,500 can be your startup cost. And there's call it 3 main ways that you can get business for free. Go door to door and offer free estimates. That's what I did. I literally went and knocked on doors for 6 hours, and I did it for 3 hours, and I brought someone with me. So both of us for 3 hours. In 6 man hours, we got 11 leads. I did 6 estimates. I booked 5 jobs for $8,000, and I made $4 grand in the next couple weeks. So I worked very part-time, and in my first month, I made $4,000 in profit. I was working a full-time job still. So there's free ways. So you can go door to door. You can cold call businesses, real estate agents, property managers, or you can start posting on Facebook, dropping cards at Sherwin-Williams, like in paint stores. You can do a lot of things. Ultimately, though, door to door will work if you do it. So that's the guarantee. That's what everyone can always fall back on. Anybody who says, Eric, I failed at the business, I said, well, you didn't go door to door. Because if you did, you wouldn't have failed. You just weren't willing to succeed that bad. Okay. So $500 to $1,500 can be your startup. Now, if you've got more money or you want to invest, you could go put another $500 or $1,000 or $2,000 into marketing. But you got to be smart about it. Don't put it in a truck. Don't put it in equipment. Don't put it on wrapping a vehicle. Don't put it into direct fly, like don't put it in flyer drops. Do something where you exchange money for leads. I call them lead services. That's where you literally pay a company every time they send you a lead. So you take $1,000, you pay it to a company, they give you 30 leads. Not right away, when they get them, but that's how you want to invest marketing early on, is with guaranteed leads, so that you have guaranteed estimates, so you've got a guaranteed shot at making sales. And if you run out of marketing money, guess what you can do? Go knock on doors. You don't have to do it forever. You just got to do it until, look, I got $4 grand in the first month. I could have taken 4,000 and just dumped it into lead services and never knocked a door again. Now, I didn't do that because door to door provides a ton of money, but you could do that. So how much does it cost to start up? $500 to $1,500 on the low end, depending on your licensing cost. And then, you could spend you could spend all the money in the world if you wanted to, but I wouldn't recommend it. So how do you make this easy? So I still, this all seems pretty simple, guys, and it is this simple, You set your business up, that'll take you a day. You make a business plan, takes you a day, and then you start running the business. Some things aren't going to work, so what do? You just figure it out. It might take you 4 to 6 weeks. So how do you make this really easy? Number one is patience. People don't have enough patience. Gary Vaynerchuk talks about this all the time. He's like, patience, you've got so much time. You're so impatient. Everybody wants their life figured out right away, and everybody wants results right away, and everybody wants overnight success right away. It doesn't work that way. Patience. Take your time. Be patient and take your time. The goal is look, you're not getting in business because you want to succeed this year and you don't care about the next 29 years. You're getting into business for your life, which includes 30 years. Give yourself a couple years to solve 5 problems so that you never have to get a job again. So patience and taking your time will make this easy. Take the freaking pressure off, one step at a time. Another little another way to cheat the system at the beginning is undercharge customers. I've got free estimating formulas you can download on my website so you can see, hey, this is good. This is a good price. Follow my estimating formulas. You can trust that price. So if you come up with $3,000, you can trust that $1,500 is a fair price for a subcontractor. So what you could do is you could give the customer $500 off, do it for $2,500, and then you can overpay your subcontractor. Instead of paying him $1,500, pay him $1,800, and you still make $700 for making the sale. So early on, just undercharge customers to get your first few jobs and be a sales crutch. And overpay your contractors early on to get some good, solid guys that you know you can trust. And do it that way, and it'll buy you some time to get better at sales so you can charge the right price and get better at recruiting and finding good contractors to work with so you can get the right price so you can get your profit correct. Okay, so there's 2 ways you can do this now. Then this should hopefully answer a few more questions, okay? And this is why I'm passionate about what I do. You can do this on your own, and I see a lot of people do it on their own. Most people who do it on their own make a lot of mistakes. Most people who do it on their own have a bad use of their funds or money. I'm telling you, the biggest one, guys, is someone spends $2,000 on a truck or a van or equipment or a website. Bad uses of funds. I'm not saying don't get a website, and I'm not saying don't get equipment. I'm saying don't do that first. Take that $2,000 and go buy 60 leads. Go buy 60 customers you can get in front of. On those 60 customers, you sit down with 45 of them and you book 10 jobs for $30,000 and you make a shitty profit margin of $8,000. Now you've got $8,000. Now you can go spend the $2,000 on your van and your website and all that other stuff, and you can take another $2,000 and get 60 more leads, and you can put $4,000 in your pocket. And you can do that because you started on the side, so you weren't desperate for money. So I see people making a lot of mistakes, a lot of bad use of funds and money. Most of the time, people have a really bad sales process. It's not easy to sell, but sales makes you a ton of money in this business. See, a lot of people have a lot of trouble with production and contractors and hiring people and how to find them and how to negotiate with them. So you end up either hiring crappy people, or you can't find people, or they want to charge as much as you're charging, so you can't make any money. And the big one that I think gets people on starting on their own, and you can probably relate to this if you're looking to start your business, is uncertainty. Uncertainty when you're solving problems. So you might not be successful with selling jobs. And this kind of goes with this one too, bad sources of information and help. So for example, you might get bad sources of information from customers. So you might go out and do 10 estimates, and 8 of those customers are like, oh, that price is too high. This happens. This is a very real example. What would you do if you did 10 estimates, didn't book a job, and 8 of those people said your price is higher than everybody else? Obviously, you'd be like, I need to lower my price. And then you lower your price, and then you might win a couple jobs. But then what happens is customers don't know what your price should be. So you lower your price, and then you go try to find contractors, and they won't work for your prices because you priced yourself too low. You priced yourself too low because customers told you to. But if you would have listened to me, I would have said, if clients are telling you your price is too high, and you're following these estimating formulas, it's because your sales process isn't good enough. See, we're the highest priced contractor, but customers go with us all the time. More than 50% of the time, the customers choose us when we do an estimate, even though we're the highest price, because they trust us, because we have a very professional sales process. If we had a crummy sales process and one of these other guys came in and was $1,000 less than us, and he was more professional than us, what do you think customers would say? Wow, your price seems really high. This other guy was just as professional or more professional than you, and he's even less money. But our price is justified, so we don't hear that. We just hear, cool, so who do I make the check out to? So uncertainty solving problems is a big one, because you will certainly run into problems, and it's going to take you a lot longer to solve problems when you have to figure it out on your own, because you got to try this. Nope, that didn't work. Try this. Nope, that didn't work. Try this. Nope, that didn't work. Try this. Ah, that worked. Instead, I can just say, hey, this is what you do. So the other way you can start this business is with help, guidance, and support, which I strongly encourage. I wish I had statistics on success rates. This is what I do, is help people start this. There's a proven process. I've been doing it for 15 years. It's a step-by-step approach. Like, it's literally paint by numbers. Do this, now do this, now do this. We've got a support group and community, so you know you're getting good advice. We've got over 700 people in our membership group. So any questions you have, people post up pictures. Hey, does this price look good, guys? Did I quote this right? Hey, I'm running into this problem with finding contractors. I'm running into this. And I moderate that group, so nobody's giving you bad advice. If you go into some public forum on Facebook, some public Facebook group, and there's a bunch of them, and you ask for some help, computer's dying on me, and you ask for some help, you don't know who's giving you advice. You might be getting some really bad advice. You might be getting advice from some guy who's tanking his business. Sorry, guys. One moment, please. So you want to make sure that who you're getting advice from is successful. You don't want to take financial advice from the guy who just lost all his money. You also don't want to take advice in your painting business from a guy who's been doing it for 25 years and has no money in his savings account. Okay, so this will also save you hundreds of hours of time, because I'm gonna go through that in a sec. And if you're not succeeding or you're failing, you'll know why, because I already have the answers. It says, hey, you're not getting enough leads. Are you implementing this system? Oh, you're not selling enough jobs. Are you following this sales process? Oh, you're having trouble with your prices. Are you following this estimating process? Oh, you're having trouble finding contractors. Are you following this? And if you say, yeah, Eric, I'm following that, you go to the group and we'll help you out. So look, I've got two programs that, and the reason I'm going through this, guys, is because there's a lot more I have to teach you and a lot more advice I have to give than I can possibly cover in a webinar. There's so much more, but it really is as simple as I showed you. It really is this simple. But this marketing strategy, this session, this in the course that I have, teaching you the marketing strategy is like 2 hours, at least 2 hours. Plus there's a whole bunch of documents and maybe it's 3 hours. There's about 15 hours of total training in the course, walking you through like, hey, here's exactly what to do with marketing. Here's exactly how to price. Here's a bunch of examples of how to price. Here's a video on how to price. Here's a ton of sales. This is probably 2 hours long at least. Same with production. I just can't possibly go through it all. So I have these two courses. Painting Business Pro is one, PPP Growth is another. There's a third course called Mentor, where I'll personally work with you. That's expensive. I wouldn't recommend it, because I charge $500 an hour. And frankly, at the beginning, you don't need me. You just got to follow the proven systems. So I teach people to build this business in 2 steps, 2 phases. Phase 1 is where you build the foundation. That's what we've mostly talked about today: marketing, estimating, sales, production, and profit. You've got to get those things down first, and you should be able to do $10,000 to $15,000 per week and make $3,000 to $4,000 per week in profit in phase 1. And at that point, you're going to be working 40 to 50 hours a week. So at that point, how you grow your business is you got to start to build a team. So that's phase 2, is building your team. This is the hardest thing you're ever going to learn in building a business. It's really hard to build teams. So those are the 2 phases to building business: build a foundation, then build a team. Painting Business Pro is just phase 1. Painting Business Pro Growth is phase 1 and phase 2. Okay, so this growth course includes Painting Business Pro plus the team building. So both of these programs include all the systems and documentation. So there's like 100 forms and documents. So I've got a contract in there that you can just slap your logo on and start using. I've got flyers that we know work. So you just slap your logo on and start using those flyers. We've got sales scripts for you to print out, use. We got estimate forms. We got client manuals that we give to our client in sales. We've got job postings to find contractors, scripts for recruiting. There's like 100 like systems documented that you'll get access to. And you just slap your logo on them and they're yours. There's about 15 hours of training videos. These training videos are broken into 20-minute segments that are supported with the documents. So it'll be like, hey, here's your 4-week projection for how you schedule your clients. And here's a video teaching you how to use it. And then the third thing is you're going to join our support community. You're going to join our Facebook group. I hate to even do this, but I gotta let people know. But look, I've got nothing but incredible reviews about these courses. I don't bullshit people. It's funny, I talk to people sometimes and they're like, oh man, I was kind of worried it was a scam. Like, did you look at the reviews? How do I fake 60 reviews on Facebook with a 5 rating and 55 reviews on a third-party site with a 4.9 rating? How do I fake that? And I've got a 30-day money-back guarantee. Here's some of the things people say, and you should go read them. It blows my mind. It's super inspiring to me, the results people get when they start putting this business into place. It's amazing. Like, lives are changed. Families are changed. Like, it's incredible the results I've seen people produce when they follow the system. And the most successful students I have are the ones who follow it the closest. This is from, I had Carl, my assistant, pull some of these. So Kimberly said, the course fantastic. The business model Eric teaches is straight to the point, will produce results if followed. We're only a few weeks in and have started implementing the different skills and tactics that he teaches, and we're already seeing big results. I'm confident we'll have a wildly successful business because of the path. I love this course. It changed my life. I was a hands-on contractor painter, and I had looked into the course, but money was tight, so you waited to buy it. Fast forward to today. I've partnered up with my first painting sub, and we just recently contracted a job in January. All new flooring and paint in a funeral home for $54,000, and we're planning on $400K in painting for the year. Dave, Wisconsin, I've been a lifelong painter, but finally decided to start my business. Insanely, magnificently, beautifully, simply amazing. A lot of adjectives. This course is perfect for someone who hasn't picked up a brush before or for someone who's been painting for years. At first, I was concerned about spending money for the online course, but let me assure you, there's really no cost. It's an investment that if you apply any of what I teach, you'll pay for yourself within the first job, which is true. Look, you sell one paint job, you make $1,000 on it. These courses are basically paid for. There's a 30-day money-back guarantee. If you get the course and you think it's bogus, I just give you your money back. It's literally no questions asked. I have people say, hey, Eric, I want a refund, and I just issue it. Okay? There's a lot of upside here, guys. There's not a lot of downside. The downside is you got to go take action. You're on the hook now. You got to be responsible for your own success. This is where you can get the course, paintingbusinesspro.com/course. So that'll kind of wrap things up, okay? And a couple things I want to address. So if you don't have painting experience, you can do this. I'm going to teach you how to get the necessary experience, and I'm going to recommend that you start really small first, like just exterior repaints. Okay, so like I said, I taught 100 college kids, thousands do it every single year to run a painting business with no background in painting, no background in business. So you can do it. That's how the course is designed, is for someone who doesn't even have any experience in business. Now, or I'm sorry, in painting or in business for that matter. Now, if you have painting experience, you have a huge advantage. You have a huge advantage. If you have painting experience, the only thing you need is someone to say, hey, this is how you do the business side. It's unbelievable to me. One of my favorite stories is, I've got so many, but one of them is on one of my website pages about a guy, what's his name? I think it's Juan in the Twin Cities. Actually, I have two amazing stories in the Twin Cities, and actually they're both named Juan. So Juan Garza, he was one of the first customers I ever had. He was a subcontractor doing about $70,000 a year, making like half that. He was struggling. Now Juan owns 14 apartment units, and he runs a multi-million-dollar painting and roofing company. He bought my course in 2013. Fucking amazing. Second one is this guy Juan. He was working for full-time for a painting company. He was making $600 a week, and and so he got my course. It took him 3 weeks to go through the whole course. The 4th week, he started his business, right? He made the plan, launched his business in the 4th week. In that 4th week, he made $2,000 in profit. Within 2 months, he bought the course in June. By August, I talked to him on the phone. He was doing $7,000 a week in business and putting $2,000 to $3,000 a week in his pocket. The guy quadrupled his income in 2 months. All upside from here. So I'm going to end it there. For those of you who are on the webinar, I'm going to stick around and answer some questions, but I'm going to end this here. So for anybody who's watching and recording this, strongly recommend that you invest in yourself. And if you're going to start this business, there's payment plans available for these training courses so that you can get them for pretty cheap. So it's not a huge expense. But I'm telling you, like, the best advice I can possibly give you is don't do this on your own, and figure out a way to come up with enough money to start the business and not do it on your own. If you have any questions, you can always email us at eric@paintingbusinesspro.com. Hope you found this webinar useful. If you're watching this on YouTube, drop a comment. If you have questions, drop a comment. Send me an email at eric@paintingbusinesspro.com if you got questions. Respond to everything personally. So now